In this video, we're going to go over some Linux basics. The primary goal here is to kind of go over some very important folders that you may want to investigate. I'm not going to go in a whole lot of depth as to how to use or how to set up Linux. I just wanted to kind of point out some of the directories that you really ought to know how to get into and what they're for. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll go to the root directory first and take a look at the different directories that are here. So the ls command actually gives you a list of the current directories and files that are wherever you happen to be. Now, the one thing to know about Linux is if I type man space ls, that is getting manual pages on the command ls. So if we hit enter, you'll see all of the different options that are available. You can use your up and down arrow keys to move through it. You can hit the space bar to go one page at a time, and then you simply hit the letter Q to get out of that particular man page. So pretty much everything that's in the system that you may need to know how to configure it or some of the options that are available, always remember that you have the man pages. Now you also have the ability obviously to Google the information if you want, but the primary thing that I usually use first is going to be the man pages, because you can get to them from anywhere and more quickly than trying to do a Google search. So the other thing, so we're in the root directory right now. So we're in that root hallway, the main place that we're going to start working from the entire computer, and taking a look at all of the different things that we have here. One of the things is our etc folder. So we're going to go into the etc folder and take a look. Now, the etc folder is where all of your configuration files go. So as an example, you have a program that needs to open up the database, for example. Well, in the etc folder, there's going to be a file. Usually it'll have a .conf at the end of it, or it really doesn't have to have that. That's just kind of a naming convention. But there will be some file there that represents that program and how it should act on that particular system when it runs. How much memory should it use? What directories should it use? What error logs should it use? All of the things that you have control over with that application are going to be there. So your etc folder, for example, you have your password file. This is the file that has all of your user accounts on it on that particular computer. You also have your host file, your really everything, every single thing that it has to do with the computer. If I cd into the network folder from the etc folder, so now you can see we're in etc network. This is the location where we have our interfaces file that controls all of the information related to the Ethernet cards and how they're set up. If there's multiple ones on the computer, are they bridged? All of the things that control the network on that particular server are going to be in that particular folder. Now keep in mind, we're on a server, on an Ubuntu server at the moment. If you're on a desktop machine, some of this stuff is a little bit different. They're still here, they're still in the same places, but as an example, the interfaces file that we're actually looking at here isn't used on a desktop environment. It actually has a control panel that controls that network process. So some of the things may not work the same way on a desktop machine as a server, and they definitely don't work the same way between an Ubuntu server and a Red Hat server, for example. But they are similar, and they're, if you understand one, you'll pick up the other pretty quickly because they're both, very, very similar. So inside of, and so right now I'm on a cd ... We'll do another listing here. You can see a lot of different configuration files. Some of them have a .conf on the end of them. There's your host name file, your host file that controls what machines are out on your network that you want to easily get to. So etc, very important for all your configuration files. Also in the etc folder, there is a folder called init.d that actually has all of the programs that run on that machine that start up automatically when you boot the machine up. A lot of them are located in this folder. They're called services. They're the ones that you can actually start up automatically when the thing boots, and these are the files that actually start and stop them. Now again, a service, when you're running a program, 99% of them, you're going to have so let's just, as an example, we've got Nginx. That's our web server that runs on this particular machine. We have the ability to type stop, which is going to stop that service. It's going to shut it down. We have the ability to say start, which is going to start the service back up. And then you're going to have a service called restart that will actually shut it down and start it back up all in one command. Almost all of the services that you have here have that capability. Now, if I'm in the etc init.d folder and I want to run one of these, then I'm actually going to have to do one of two things. I can type in the full path, which is something that we talked about earlier. So I could do this and tell it to stop. Or if I'm already in the folder, I can type /nginx stop. So as you can see, it's a little bit easier doing that than it is typing the full path, but either one of them is going to work just fine. So another folder that we want to take a look at is if we do another listing here, is going to be our Var folder. So we're going to cd/var. We'll do a listing here. And the main folder I want to look at first is going to be our log file, or our log folder. This is where every single thing that happens on this machine as it's running throughout the day is going to be hitting something inside this folder to tell the system how it is performing. Did it get an error? If it did get an error, what is the error? All of those kind of things are all being logged here. One command that is very useful for checking out in a Linux box is dmessage. It actually will go and look at all the system messages that have been taking place and give you a listing of everything that's happened. If you plug in a USB device, unplug a USB device, dmessage is going to have that stuff registered. Now, all dmessage is a program that's actually looking at the system log files. So if you actually take a look in the directory, you have authentication logs, you have dmessage right here, which is what the program is actually looking at. You've got system logs, kernel logs, mail logs, PHP, MySQL, whatever it happens to be. There's going to be a log file in here that's kind of reporting on how that program is operating. So your var log file is a very good place to go and check things out. Also inside of your var folder, you have a run folder. These are where programs put a file, a handle to tell the system that they're running currently. It's a way for it to kind of lock the system and make sure that we don't get 45 of the same program running in the background. If the program runs as a service or has something that runs on a continuous basis, it's going to create a log file, a PID file that's going to kind of report that it is currently running. If we look in the var folder, we've got lock files. We got the mail folder that actually holds your mail information if you have a mail server. A www folder, which is where all the web server stuff is going to go, all your websites. You've got a cache folder. If we get out of here and do another listing in the root directory, we also have a media and an MNT folder, and it's kind of depending on the system and what's going on as to which one of those are getting used, but they basically hold any USB drives that are connected to that machine are available. They link themselves into that MNT folder usually. The media folder could also get used. It's really dependent on how the system's set up and what you choose to use. So if we get out of the MNT folder, you have the home folder. This is a directory where all of your user accounts live. So anytime you tell the system to add a user to the system, they're going to have an entry in the home folder. And that's where when they log in, that's where they're going to be placed. And so the home folder is a pretty important thing to kind of keep up with as well. You've got your boot folder, your bin folder, which is where programs and stuff get put. The last folder that I want to mention in this video is going to be your Proc folder. Now the Proc folder is actually a very, very cool place to poke around. What basically happens is when the system boots up, the hardware level things like your hard drive, your memory, your CPU, all of those things get mapped into a file on Linux that gives you direct access to certain properties about those things. So as an example, if I cat, and cat basically just displays a file on the screen, but if I cat the meminfo file, you can see all of the information about this machine and about the current situation with respect to RAM, your memory that's built into that machine. So the Proc folder gives you a really cool place, quick place to go and get diagnostic information about that machine's hardware. So Linux as a whole, the main things that you need to know how to use are CD to move around, and then you need to understand your ls command to be able to list what's in the current directory. And in another video, I'm going to get into some VI basics to kind of get you started with the VI editor. You do need to have an editor to use in the operating system if you're working with a server, because you're not going to be able to open things up in Notepad and visually look at them. I prefer VI because it's a very powerful editor, and it has a lot more capabilities than most of the other editors that are out there. So, the VI editor is another good thing to know. But on a whole, being able to CD and LS, you can actually at least go in and look at what information is being stored in each one of these folders. So it's useful information to know. You're not going to necessarily be working with all of the files and things that you see in there. You're going to spend a lot of time in the etc folder if you're doing server setup and diagnostics and that kind of thing. That's where all of the controls and stuff are for the different programs. But on a whole, you're going to be using the apt-get to install new services in Linux, and then you'll be using etc to configure those services once they get loaded.